Now we are going to talk about Rupert Brooke. When we study these word poets, we have to be familiar with some of the biographical information of these people, because this is the case in which their life experience actually influenced and affected their poetic production. Brooke was born in England and he studied in Cambridge at King's College, therefore he had an important education. He produced early poetic writings when he was a student, but from the beginning we can see in him the tendency to represent an idyllic view of the English countryside and of the English landscape. He experienced many journeys to Italy, Germany, North America, and very soon he was commissioned into the Royal Naval Division when the First World War broke out. So he joined the war as a volunteer. Brooke's most famous poetic work is represented by the sonnet collection, which is entitled 1914 and Other Poems, and that was published a year after his death in 1915, because as you can see from the dates, he was born in 1887 and he died in 1915, so just a short time after the beginning of World War I. So one aspect of Brooke's biography needs to be taken into account to understand more about his war poetry. He didn't have a long experience of war. In fact, he soon got ill, he contracted blood poisoning, therefore he was then sent to hospital. So he left the trenches and he left the war experience. So this fact prevented him from experiencing the most terrible aspects of war, and this explains much of Brooke's exaltation and patriotism, which are the main themes of his sonnets. So he idealized the experience of war as a kind of purifying experience for people and for nations. So in his poem, we can say that traditional values are expressed. Also, the form of the poem itself is, we can say, a kind of traditional poem because it follows the traditional scheme of the sonnet. We've got a traditional rhyme scheme, even though sonnets were becoming particularly rare in this period. So in this case, a traditional form is used to make an appeal, so to call for the importance of the traditions of England. And this form obviously recalls the Shakespearean tradition, Shakespeare's sonnets. In his poem, there is also, for example, the use of very traditional stylistic features like archaic language, figures of speech, very regular rhyme scheme, so the typical elements of a sonnet. If I should die, think only this of me. So this sonnet is entitled The Soldier. If I should die, think only this of me, that there is some corner of a foreign field that is forever England. There shall be in that rich earth a richer dust concealed, a dust whom England bore, shaped, made aware, gave once a flowers to lover, ways to roam, a body of England's breathing English air, washed by the rivers, blessed by sons of home, and think this heart all evil shed away, a pulse in the eternal mind, no less, give somewhere back the thoughts by England given, her sights and sounds, dreams happy as her day, and laughter learnt of friends and gentleness in hearts at peace under an English heaven. So in this page you can see both the English text and the Italian translation, so you can understand better the meaning of the poem. Now we're going to take this page, which shows, on the contrary, only the English version of the sonnet, and we're going to have a very quick analysis of the most important points of the poem. So line 1, if I should die, think only this of me, can show already from the beginning a kind of slightly archaic formal poetic structure. So it recalls the great patriotic battle and battle speeches in front of people. That there's some corner of a foreign field that is forever England. So the idea is that if you put an English corpse in the ground, an English corpse is the body, the dead body of an Englishman, of an English soldier, then this ground will be forever England, as said in line 3. So if you put an English corpse in the ground, it becomes English. The ground becomes English. This becomes a little corner of England. You will see that in the sonnet, these two words, the adjective English and the name England, are repeated many times. And these obviously contribute to the idea of a patriotic meaning of the sonnet. So the poet wants to appeal to arouse the reader's sense of patriotism, that means love for his country. There shall be in that rich earth a richer dust concealed. So in that earth, even though a foreign country, a foreign ground, there will be a richer dust. The dust is obviously the body of the soldier, of the English soldier who has died for his country, and that he is hidden, concealed under the ground of another nation. A dust whom England bore, so a body that was produced by England. So England is seen as the mother of these young soldiers. Therefore, we can say that England doesn't have a capital letter only because it's a nation, but England becomes personified. England is the mother that gives birth to the soldiers and to the young men who are now fighting for this country. So this man, this body that has now become dust, was shaped, formed, was given awareness by England, that was his mother. Gave once her flowers to love, her ways to roam, a body of England. So these flowers to love and ways to roam are images, sketches of the English landscape, which is a kind of idealized country. So seen as a country in which little roads and fields with flowers dominate. So we've got this idea of a peaceful rural country, peaceful and rural England, which was very, for example, familiar in romantic poets and poems. If we think about Wordsworth, for example, he depicted this picturesque image of England as peaceful and quiet. A body of England's breathing English air, washed by the rivers, blessed by sons of home. So again he continues with the same image of an idealized country. A country in which not only little roads and flowers cover the ground, but the ground is also blessed, kissed by the suns, and washed, purified by its rivers. So we've got this very idealized, romantic way of speaking about his country. And think, this heart all evil shed away, a pulse in the eternal mind. So we've got some archaism, the idea that the said soldier becomes a pulse in the eternal mind. So when the soldier is dead, he is not lost. He becomes a kind of presence in the eternal mind of the world. He becomes a kind of part of God, of universe. So this sounds really wonderful. This sounds really philosophical almost, but also at the same time quite sentimental. The idea that soldier after that death is connected, is linked to God. And then it says, give somewhere back the thoughts by England given, her sights and sounds, dreams happy as her day. This her is obviously referred to England. So again, here we can see the personification of England, which is not just seen as a country, as a nation, but as a real presence, as an essence, as a being, as a mother, as we have said. So these are the values of England. That means gentleness and peace that she gives to the hearts of people. So as we can say that, as we have said, this poem mirrors the traditional values of the beginning of the experience of World War I. We've got this sense of patriotism, the heroic idea of death. So there is no reference to blood, violence, to wounds, but the death of the soldier is seen as a kind of idealized spiritual experience, as a kind of sacrifice for his own country. It doesn't deal with anything real about the experience of the war. So concluding, we can say that this sonnet speaks about the experience as it was seen by Brooke and by the very beginning of World War I, as a sacrifice for the nation, where war is glorified as a triumph of patriotism and heroism. Some critics have underlined that this poetry is really sometimes too sentimental and superficial. Nevertheless, we have to recognize that this was a kind of historical document that reflected the exalted mood of Britain during the years which were immediately before the outbreak or the beginning of First World War. So the introduction of the reality of the war will be present, especially in the poems by Saxon and Owen, where the horrors of the war are introduced and the tone is completely different.